It was supposed to be her first birthday without her mom, but someone ripped it all apart. My daughter stood there, staring at the shredded decorations with tears in her eyes and whispered, "Did I do something wrong?" I didn't have an answer then, but what I did next turned the whole neighborhood upside down. The calendar didn't care about grief. It just kept moving forward. July 14th. The date stared back at me from the kitchen wall, circled in a bright pink marker by hands that no longer existed. My wife, Emily, had marked it months before she passed away, back when the world still felt whole, back when our little girl's 7th birthday was supposed to be a day of joy, not a day we all dreaded. I stared at the circle for a long time that morning. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Normally, this time of year would be filled with giggles, party plans, and the sweet smell of cupcakes baking in the oven. Instead, it smelled like stale coffee and the kind of silence that wraps around your chest like a heavy blanket. "Daddy?" A small voice broke through. I turned to see my daughter, Ellie, standing at the hallway entrance in her unicorn pajamas. Her eyes were still puffy from sleep, her hair tangled from tossing and turning. She looked so much like Emily it hurt to look at her sometimes. "Yeah, baby?" I forced a smile. She patted over and climbed into my lap without another word. I held her close, feeling her tiny heartbeat against mine. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Do you think Mommy knows it's today?" I squeezed her tighter, swallowing the lump in my throat. "She knows, sweetheart. She's watching us. And she's so proud of you." Ellie nodded slowly. "I wish she could be here for my party." "Me too. God, me too." That party was more than just balloons and cake, it was all we had left of the plan Emily had made. Before the cancer took her, she had made a list of things to do for Ellie's next birthday. "It has to be magical," she had said, even while the chemo made her hands shake. "It's her first birthday where she'll start remembering details. Make it unforgettable." So I tried. I really did. For the past week, I'd been working nonstop. After Ellie went to bed, I stayed up late building paper lanterns, stringing fairy lights around the backyard, hand-painting little signs that read Ellie's magical garden. Emily had wanted a fairy theme, and I followed every note she left in her notebook to the letter. Every time I touched the glitter, I heard her voice telling me to add a little extra sparkle. It matters. Neighbors even offered to help. Some brought cupcakes, others lent tables and chairs. One woman down the street sewed a purple tulle skirt for Ellie's birthday dress. Everyone seemed to understand how important this day was. Everyone except Karen. Karen was the HOA board vice president and self-declared neighborhood standards enforcer. She lived 2 doors down and made it her mission to complain about, well, everything. Your grass is too long. Your trash can was left out for 20 minutes too long. Your wind chimes are excessively whimsical. But I figured even she wouldn't cross a line when it came to a little girl's birthday, especially one with this much emotional weight behind it. I was wrong. 3 days before the party, she stopped by. I was out front hanging a paper, "Welcome Fairies," sign by the mailbox when she pulled up in her perfectly polished SUV. "I hope that's not permanent," she said, stepping out and gesturing at the decorations. "It's for my daughter's birthday," I said as kindly as I could. "Just for the weekend." She crossed her arms. "We have HOA regulations. No excessive lawn ornaments, signs, or outdoor lights not approved by the board." I blinked. "It's for 1 day. It's still a violation." I was stunned. "Karen, this is Ellie's first birthday since Emily passed. Just give us some grace, please." Her expression didn't change. "I'm sorry for your loss. But rules are rules. You need to take all of this down by tomorrow evening or there will be a fine." I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just nodded and went back inside before Ellie could hear any of it. I didn't tell her what happened. I couldn't. Instead, I waited until the next day after school and distracted her with a trip to the bakery, while some of our neighbors volunteered to help hide decorations temporarily in their garages. We figured we'd set everything back up on the morning of the party. 1 day. That's all we needed. But Karen wasn't done. The night before the birthday, I woke up to the sound of something crashing outside. I rushed to the backyard with a flashlight, and my heart shattered. The handmade decorations Emily had designed were shredded. Fairy wings torn apart. Banners ripped. The lights she'd wanted twinkling above Ellie's cake were smashed in the dirt. Even the cake topper, a delicate ceramic piece shaped like a fairy queen, was shattered into pieces. There was no wind. No animals. Just destruction. Deliberate. Cruel. I stood there in the dark, staring at the wreckage. I sank to my knees, the cold grass soaking through my pajama pants. I don't know how long I cried. I just remember thinking, how am I going to tell her? The next morning, I tried my best to fix what I could. Some decorations were beyond repair, but a few could be salvaged. I didn't want Ellie to see me cry again. I didn't want her to think the world had given up on her. But when she walked outside with her little hands clutching the pink gift bag she'd made for her mom, she stopped dead in her tracks. Where's the fairies? I couldn't lie. I couldn't tell her it was a mistake. I think someone didn't want us to have decorations. She looked up at me, confused. Was it because I was bad? My heart cracked wide open. No, baby. You did nothing wrong. You're perfect. She didn't say anything. She just walked to the swing set and sat there, her back to me, the gift bag still clutched in her hands. And that's when I knew. I couldn't let it end like this. Not for Emily. Not for Ellie. Not for the little piece of joy we had left. Tomorrow, Karen would regret ever touching my daughter's magic. And my daughter? She was going to smile again. Even if I had to bring the whole block together to make it happen. The sun had barely risen, but I was already outside, standing in what used to be a dream brought to life, a fairy-themed birthday paradise, designed with love and hope. Now, it looked like a storm had rolled through and left only remnants of joy behind. I looked around at the chaos. The pastel pink streamers were shredded and tangled in the bushes. The handmade fairy lanterns, each one Ellie had helped decorate with glitter and stickers, lay crushed and crumpled in the grass. The "Happy Birthday Ellie" banner Emily and I had painted together before her final hospital stay was torn down the middle, muddy boot prints across the part that once held Emily's neat, looping handwriting. It was like someone had taken a knife to our memories. And I knew exactly who did it. Karen had made her message loud and clear. This wasn't just about HOA rules. This was personal. The day before, she had filed an official violation notice. One of the neighbors, Susan, quietly slipped me a copy. She went to the board without telling anyone else, she whispered, and got temporary enforcement authority for your street. Claims it's about maintaining property values. Her voice trembled with disgust. It's your daughter's birthday. She's lost enough. I thanked her, though I could barely speak. I was too angry, but I didn't want Ellie to see that side of me. Not yet. Ellie came outside not long after. She still had her little handmade crown tucked under one arm, purple foam, glitter-glued gems, and a small picture of her mom taped to the center. She stopped short when she saw what had happened. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She blinked fast like she was trying not to cry. Daddy, her voice was so small. Did the wind do this? I paused. For a moment, I almost said yes. I almost lied, to protect her from the cruelty. But she deserved the truth. No, sweetheart. Somebody tore it all down. She frowned. But why? It was for Mommy. And me. I knelt next to her. I don't know. Some people, they don't understand how important this is. She looked around again. Did I do something wrong? That question hit me like a brick. No, baby. This has nothing to do with you. You are amazing. You did everything right. She nodded slowly, then held out the crown. Can we fix it before everyone gets here? I felt the tears behind my eyes, but I pushed them down. I took the crown, adjusted it gently on her head, and forced a smile. We'll fix everything, Ellie. I promise. But inside, I was raging. Over the next few hours, neighbors began arriving. Not as guests, just as friends. Word had spread quickly, and by mid-morning, people were showing up with arms full of decorations, baked goods, replacement lights, even fairy wings. Karen said she was just enforcing the rules, one of them muttered while taping up paper butterflies on our front fence. But nobody else on the board knew about it until after she did it. Another neighbor, Rob, handed me a stack of new paper lanterns. We've been watching her pick on you for months. This crossed a line. But the more people helped, the clearer it became, we couldn't fix all of it. The backyard was still too ruined. Too much had been destroyed. Too much time had been lost. The party couldn't happen here anymore. I sat down on the porch steps and watched Ellie quietly coloring in her birthday card for Emily, which she planned to tie to a balloon and release into the sky. She was still wearing the crown. It was slightly crooked now, but she kept adjusting it like her little world depended on it staying upright. That's when I felt it, this heat rising in my chest. Not just anger. Not just grief. Something sharper. Something that said, no more. Karen hadn't just destroyed decorations. She destroyed something sacred. She ruined the one day that could have helped my daughter begin to heal. And in that moment, I decided, if Karen wanted to play dirty, fine. But I wasn't just going to salvage this birthday, I was going to turn it into something unforgettable. Something bigger. I stood up, looked at the group of neighbors still working, and said, change of plans. Everyone paused. We're not just fixing this backyard, I said. We're throwing a party so big Karen will hear the laughter from her living room. There were a few nervous laughs, but then Susan stepped forward. What do you need? Space. Decorations. Sound system. Food. A bouncy house if someone's got one. We have a cul-de-sac, Rob said. What if we shut it down for the afternoon? And decorate the whole block, someone else added. The ideas started flowing like wildfire. Within 20 minutes, we had a full-blown plan to turn the neighborhood into a party zone. The HOA president himself, Mr. Porter, drove over to help once he heard what Karen had done. This was never approved by the board, he said, clearly furious. She acted alone. We'll deal with that. But in the meantime, let's make this right. A dozen parents pooled together money for pizzas and cupcakes. Teens from down the street offered to DJ. One woman volunteered to bring face paint. 2 dads began setting up folding tables on the curb, while others strung fairy lights between mailboxes and tree branches. We even found a neighbor with a snow cone machine. And as we built it, block by block, string light by string light, I saw something change in Ellie. She was smiling again. Tentative at first, then fully, as she helped hang flower garlands from mailbox posts. Every time someone offered her a cupcake sample or asked where to put the balloons, she lit up like she was finally seen. Finally remembered. Finally celebrated. That was when it hit me, this party wasn't just revenge. It was resurrection. A way to remind Ellie that the world still had joy in it, even after everything had been taken from her. A way to prove that love, real, community-driven love, was stronger than any bitter woman with a clipboard. But Karen wasn't done yet. Around 3 p.m., just as the final touches were being made, she stepped out of her front door, heels clicking on the pavement like she was inspecting a crime scene. She crossed her arms, jaw clenched, and stared at the sea of decorations, fairy wings, ribbons, signs, music, laughter. Her eyes narrowed when she spotted Ellie running around with a group of kids, giggling. She walked up to Mr. Porter. What is the meaning of all this? It's a neighborhood party, he said flatly. This violates. Enough, Karen, he snapped. You've done enough damage. She sputtered. I was only following rules. No, he said. You were following your own bitterness. And this, he pointed to the joyful chaos, is what a community really looks like. Karen didn't say another word. She turned on her heel and stormed back inside. And as her front door slammed shut, Ellie came running up to me, cheeks flushed with happiness. Daddy, she said breathlessly, this is the best birthday ever. I knelt down, touched her cheek, and smiled through the tears in my eyes. It's only just getting started, sweetheart. The music faded. The laughter quieted. As the last of the guests trickled away and the sun dipped behind the rooftops, casting long golden shadows across the street, I felt the adrenaline drain from my body. The party had been a success, a massive, glitter-covered, cupcake-fueled, fairy-themed triumph. But now, in the stillness that followed, I realized something was still unsettled. Ellie sat quietly on the porch swing, legs dangling, the remains of her purple birthday dress smudged with frosting and sidewalk chalk. She held the balloon string in her hand, the small white envelope attached to it fluttering gently in the breeze. Inside the envelope was her letter to her mom. She hadn't let go of it yet. I sat beside her, careful not to break the silence too quickly. We just rocked slowly back and forth, the creaking wood of the swing the only sound between us. After a long pause, she asked softly, "Do you think Mommy saw?" I swallowed hard. I think she saw everything. Even the decorations getting ruined? My chest tightened. Yeah, even that part. She stared at the balloon. I think she would have been sad about that. She would have, I said gently. But she would have been really proud of you. Ellie didn't respond right away. Her fingers twisted the balloon string. Then, in a voice that was barely above a whisper, she said the words that crushed me completely. Did Karen do it because of me? I froze. I turned to her slowly, but she didn't look at me. She just kept her eyes on the balloon, the string now taut between her fingers like a lifeline. I had no idea what to say. Because what could I say? That a grown woman, someone with power in the community, someone who should have known better, had intentionally destroyed a child's joy over some imaginary offense? That she was petty enough to ruin a grieving little girl's birthday out of spite? That this woman had watched my daughter help tie ribbons and hang paper lanterns, and still found it in her heart to rip it all down? I wanted to shield Ellie from that truth. But in that moment, I realized I couldn't shield her from the world forever. The grief, the cruelty, the injustice, it had already touched her. And yet she was still here, still smiling when she could, still believing in magic, still asking questions no child should ever have to ask. I reached over, gently taking her hand in mine. No, baby, I said carefully. None of this was your fault. Not even a little bit. But she tore everything down, Ellie said. Everything we made for Mommy. Tears welled up in her eyes. I saw them trembling, threatening to spill over. Was it because I talk about Mommy too much? Because I wanted to make her proud? And that was it. That was the moment I couldn't hold it in anymore. I pulled her into my arms, held her tight against my chest, and let the tears fall. Oh, Ellie, no. Never. Your Mommy would be so proud of you. Every single day. You didn't do anything wrong. You loved her. You still do. That's beautiful. That's brave. But why would someone be so mean? She whispered into my shirt. I don't know, I said honestly. Some people, they don't know how to deal with other people's joy. Or their pain. Or their love. I pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. But just because someone does something awful, that doesn't mean it was because of you. Sometimes people are just broken inside. And instead of fixing themselves, they try to break others. Ellie blinked, trying to understand. So, Karen's sad too. I paused. I hadn't expected that. Maybe, I said after a moment. Maybe she's hurting in some way. But that doesn't make what she did okay. Ellie looked down at the envelope. I didn't want Mommy to see all the bad stuff. I wiped a tear from her cheek. Mommy wouldn't have focused on that. She would have seen how hard you worked. She would have seen your dress, your fairy crown, the cupcakes you helped make. She would have seen you laugh, and run around with your friends, and smile again. Ellie was quiet for a moment. Then she whispered, I tried really hard to be happy today. I know you did. I smiled, though my voice broke. And you made everyone else happy, too. Even me. She sniffled and finally looked up at me. Can I still send Mommy the letter? Of course, sweetheart. I stood up and walked with her to the center of the yard. The party lights were still strung above the street, gently swaying. The chalk art her friends had drawn on the sidewalk had turned into a soft kaleidoscope of color in the low light. Ellie lifted the balloon high and closed her eyes. Dear Mommy, she said aloud, her voice small but steady. I miss you. I love you. I had a birthday party today. It was really big, and Daddy smiled a lot. I wore the dress you picked out. Everyone said I looked like a fairy princess. I think you would have loved it. I hope you got the cake we sent to heaven. I made sure they put extra sprinkles. Love, Ellie. Then she let go. The balloon rose slowly at first, catching a bit of wind as it sailed higher and higher, drifting past the rooftops and up into the sky that had just begun to turn pink with the setting sun. We watched it until it was just a dot, then nothing. Ellie reached out and took my hand. Do you think she got it? I squeezed her fingers gently. I know she did. She leaned into me, her head resting against my side. I still miss her every day. So do I. We stood there like that for a long time, just the two of us, surrounded by the quiet after the storm, and the gentle glow of everything we'd rebuilt. The fairy lights twinkled, soft music still playing from someone's phone on the steps. A few neighbors were packing up tables or saying goodbye, but the mood was warm. Kind. Safe. Despite everything, Ellie had found a way to be happy again. Even for just one day. And as I looked down at her, my strong, sweet, brave little girl, I realized something important. Karen may have ruined the decorations. But she didn't ruin the love. She didn't break the spirit of a child who still believed in magic. And no matter how much cruelty the world had left to throw at us, I would keep fighting to protect that belief. For Ellie. For Emily. For the family we were still learning to be. By the time the sun rose the next day, I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't just going to rebuild Ellie's birthday. I was going to elevate it. Not out of spite, but out of love. Because no little girl who lost her mother, no child who spent weeks preparing decorations from her mom's memory, should go to bed thinking someone tore her world down because she did something wrong. I stood at the kitchen table, coffee gone cold, staring at the notebook Emily had once filled with party plans. It still smelled faintly of her, a mix of lavender hand cream and strawberry lip balm. Every page held her neat handwriting, filled with reminders and dreams. Fairy lights in the tree's glowing star. Make wings for Ellie's friend's woman fairy. Have music and dancing. Make it feel like a dream. I touched the corner of the page and whispered to myself, let's give her the dream, Em. Just a bigger one. And from there, things moved fast. First, I called Susan down the street. She was the kind of woman who could organize a wedding in 48 hours with just sticky notes and iced coffee. I didn't even have to explain, she'd seen the backyard. She'd seen Ellie's face. The only thing she said was, we're shutting down the street. Then she started calling people. Within an hour, we had a neighborhood group chat buzzing with ideas and volunteers. We'd do it right in the cul-de-sac, space enough for tables, games, and decorations that couldn't be ripped down without a public scene. Rob offered his front yard for a bounce house. The Diaz family, 3 houses over, owned a taco truck and insisted on serving food for free. One dad had DJ equipment from his teenage son's garage band days and was already loading speakers into his truck. It was happening. Fast. I turned to Ellie, who sat on the couch with her fairy crown in her lap. She still looked tired, like the emotional roller coaster had drained everything in her. But I knelt in front of her, placed my hands on her small shoulders, and said, sweetheart, how would you feel if we had your party outside today? But not just in our yard. What if we used the whole street? Her eyes widened. The whole street? Every mailbox, every driveway. Everyone wants to help. It'll be big. As big as you want. But only if you want it. She hesitated, then nodded. Slowly at first. Then faster. Can we have music? Absolutely. And cupcakes? Twice as many as before. She grinned, just a little. But it was the first real smile I'd seen in 2 days. That was all I needed. By noon, the entire cul-de-sac was transformed. The neighbors had come out in force. Sidewalk chalk drawings stretched from driveway to driveway, fairies, rainbows, stars, and little messages for Ellie, happy birthday, fairy princess, and Emily is proud of you. The lampposts had been wrapped in ribbons. Paper butterflies fluttered in the trees. Folding tables held rows of cookies, sandwiches, and drinks. Someone had even set up a cotton candy machine, donated by a local shop owner who'd heard about what happened. At the center of it all was a wide-open space with a soft pink carpet and a sign made by the neighborhood kids that read, Ellie's Fairy Kingdom. She walked into it like royalty. I watched as Ellie twirled in the middle of the street in her purple dress, her fairy wings sparkling in the sunlight, her crown firmly back on her head. And the people cheered. Real cheers, not the kind people give to be polite. The kind that come from the gut. The kind that make you believe in goodness again. And there, among the laughter, music, and balloons, Karen stepped outside. She stood on her porch, arms folded, looking like someone who just discovered her name had been left off the guest list to a party she believed she owned. She hadn't expected this. She thought tearing down the decorations would break us. That a notice and a threat would keep us quiet. That we'd disappear back into our grief like obedient little sheep. Instead, we'd painted the whole damn block with joy. She took a single step off her porch, maybe to object, maybe to make another scene, but before she could speak, the HOA president, Mr. Porter, cut her off. Don't even try, he said flatly. This is exactly what this neighborhood needed. And you're the only one who wasn't invited. Maybe take the hint. And she did. For the first time since Emily passed, Karen turned around, and went back inside. Good. Because this day wasn't about her. Ellie's party lasted for hours. There was music, dancing, games, and even a short performance from the neighborhood teens who choreographed a fairy-themed dance just for her. At one point, I watched her hold hands with 3 friends, all of them in makeshift wings and glitter, dancing in a circle while singing off-key to a Taylor Swift song blaring from the speakers. And in that moment, she was just a little girl again. Not the daughter of a grieving widower. Not the girl whose decorations were destroyed. Not the child who asked if it was her fault. Just a kid. Laughing. Spinning. Smiling. I looked up at the sky and hoped Emily could see it. When the sun began to dip and the shadows stretched long again, someone lit the fairy lights along the fences. They glowed golden, soft like fireflies. Ellie came up to me, her cheeks red from running, her voice tired but happy. "Daddy," she said. "Yeah, sweetheart? Can we do this every year?" My throat tightened. "Every single year." "And next time," she paused, looking around at the glowing faces of our neighbors, "we can invite everyone. But not Karen, okay?" I smiled. "Deal." She leaned against me and whispered, "I don't feel so sad anymore." And I realized something in that moment. This party had never really been about revenge. Sure, it had felt good to prove Karen wrong, to watch her sulk while the rest of the street lit up with love. But this wasn't a story about getting even. It was a story about rising above. About showing a little girl that darkness doesn't win. That love doesn't stop just because someone's gone. That a neighborhood can become a family. That a birthday can be magical even if it starts in heartbreak. And that a child's smile is the loudest kind of defiance there is. The street still shimmered with the afterglow of the party. Stray glitter clung to the sidewalk, fairy wings hung on fences like sleepy butterflies, and paper lanterns swayed softly in the dusk breeze. The sun had set completely now, and the soft golden lights we'd strung across the neighborhood lit up the night like stars come down to visit. Ellie sat cross-legged on a blanket near the driveway, her hands busy with a leftover cupcake. She'd already smeared half the frosting on her nose without realizing it, too absorbed in a story one of the older girls was reading aloud to a circle of younger kids. It was about fairies, of course. I stood a few feet away, leaning against the hood of my truck, arms folded as I watched her, just soaking in the sight. For the first time in what felt like forever, she looked like a child completely free of pain. Her eyes sparkled. Her shoulders relaxed. There was no tension in her jaw, no forced smiles, no whispered "I'm okay"s when she clearly wasn't. She was just happy. And in that quiet moment of peace, I felt the weight of the last few months shift in my chest. It didn't disappear. Grief never does. But something changed. It softened. Because today wasn't just about healing Ellie, it had healed something in me too. People often talk about grief like it's something you move past, like it's a hurdle or a finish line. But it's not. It's a room you learn to live in. A quiet companion that walks beside you forever. But moments like this, when light floods into that room again, even for just a few hours, remind you that joy isn't gone. It's just been waiting for a way back in. And today, that way was a block-wide fairy party. The guests began to leave in waves, each one stopping to say goodbye to Ellie, many kneeling to hug her or hand her small gifts. A few brought drawings, some gave her stickers or notes, and one older woman even gave her a hand-sewn fairy doll. Ellie hugged every one of them like they were long-lost family. When Mr. Porter came by, he brought a small envelope addressed to me. "I wanted to wait until the end," he said quietly. "But you should know, we held an emergency meeting after what Karen did." I opened the envelope and read the short, typed letter. It was signed by all the other HOA board members. Effective immediately, Karen had been removed from her position. Porter folded his arms. She violated multiple protocols. Acted without approval. Harassed a grieving family. It was unanimous. She's off the board. And we've updated the bylaws to prevent anything like this from ever happening again. I blinked, surprised. "You did all this today?" He nodded. "You threw the biggest, most beautiful party this neighborhood's ever seen. You brought everyone together. That kind of love? That's the heart of this community. Not clipboards and complaints." He paused. "Karen doesn't represent us. But you and Ellie do." I shook his hand, genuinely moved. "Thank you." He smiled. "Thank you for reminding us what community really means." Karen never showed her face again that night. Her porch light stayed off. Her curtains closed. I imagined she heard every cheer, every burst of laughter, every chorus of "Happy Birthday" echoing through the cul-de-sac she once ruled with her rulebook and her scowl. But no one missed her. Not a single neighbor asked where she was. No one suggested we go invite her. Not one child wondered why her house was the only one without decorations or light. It was as if the absence of her presence made the celebration brighter. Ellie didn't ask about her either. Not once. She was too busy living. Too busy soaking in the love. Too busy being surrounded by the kind of people who chose to show up. And as I stood at the edge of the driveway with a trash bag full of used paper plates and popped balloons, I felt something solid take root in my chest, a kind of peace I hadn't felt since the hospital room went quiet that night Emily slipped away. Because this was what she wanted. Not a perfect party. Not a flawless display. Not a day without sadness or interruption. Just joy. Real joy. In the middle of all the mess. Later that night, after the lanterns were taken down and the last cupcake had been eaten, I tucked Ellie into bed. Her new fairy doll was tucked under her arm, and her crown rested on the nightstand. She looked up at me, eyes heavy but still full of light. "Daddy," she murmured. "Yeah, sweetheart? Thank you, for everything." I kissed her forehead. "You're welcome, my brave little fairy." She smiled sleepily. "I think Mommy saw everything." I nodded, trying not to let my voice crack. "I think so too." Ellie reached for my hand and whispered, "I think she's proud of us." And in that moment, those 6 little words, I felt Emily's presence fill the room. Not as a memory. Not as a ghost. But as love. Pure, eternal, unwavering love. The kind you fight for. The kind you build parties out of. The kind you use to outshine the Karens of the world. The next morning, I stepped out onto the porch and saw what was left of the celebration. Stray glitter still shimmered on the pavement. A chalk-drawn fairy with "Happy Birthday Ellie" beneath it smiled up at me from the sidewalk. And taped to our mailbox was a card that hadn't been there the night before. It was simple. No return address. Just a child's handwriting. "Dear Ellie, thank you for letting us be part of your special day. We think your mommy is proud too. Love, your fairy neighbors." I looked around at the neighborhood, quiet now in the soft morning light, and smiled. Everyone came. Except Karen. And you know what? We didn't need her. Because my daughter smiled. Really smiled. And in that moment, I knew. The worst had already happened to us, and we survived. Because we still had each other. Because love doesn't need permission slips or HOA approval. Because joy, even when rebuilt from broken pieces, still shines.